So next we have another teacher from Johnston. This is Sarah Kate Howe. She is also a life science teacher. So I'll turn it over to Sarah Kate.
Thank you very much. Like you said, I'm Sarah Kate. I teach biology and AP biology at Johnston. So I'm part of the team with Kyla. And then we have another teacher who works with us. We make up a team. Her name's Jen Rawlings. And so ultimately, we all teach biology, and then we all have our other courses in terms of AP biology, and Kyla teaches AP environmental science and zoology. So the name, and I'm a notoriously fast talker, so if you need me to repeat something, let me know. The name of this session is Appy Hour, which I can't take credit for that name. And because what we do at our school through our technology program is after schools, we'll have these Appy Hour days where people can come in and learn and share about any apps. So I just kind of stole the title. So actually, I think Kyla stole the title. So these are mostly life science apps, but some of them also can kind of be twisted to physical science, okay, a lot, and also a lot of the application stuff, and we'll get into, especially with NGSS, where we're talking about, climate change and things along those lines, where they have their life science component and their physical science component. So a lot of these apps go right along with that. Also on the table tent, or whatever you want to call it, there is a handout where I actually did put in the links. Where you can have the links to either, if it's available online, so if it's a web tool and an app, which a lot of them are, or if it's not available online, then where you can get it in terms of the App Store or Google Play and those types of things, okay? And then also, if you have any questions as you're going through, please don't hesitate to ask. Yeah, I will be happy to answer any of those. So, all right, let's keep going. All right, so I guess the first thing that we should go over is why we tend to move towards apps when we are talking about content learning and things along those lines. And because the World Wide Web is available, okay, and you can access it if you're one-to-one, or if you're not one-to-one and you have a cart, you have the World Wide Web. But what we found when we release kids on the internet, which I'm sure you've found too, they bring back some interesting things. Very, very interesting things. And so when we're focusing on gathering evidence to support a claim, or to develop reasoning, we found that when you can put them in one area and kind of let them go, that's much better than putting them in the internet and letting them go, because ultimately they bring back the most interesting things, and then they get some of their misconceptions supported. And so we found when we can find a good app from a reputable source like HHMI, like Howard Hughes Medical Institute, or NCBI or anything like that, that we tend to have them pull back better evidence, okay? And then ultimately, whenever you're thinking about apps or technology in general, you got to think about that SAMR model, okay? And then why are we doing it? Is this better? Is this worse? Is this a substitution? Is this redefinition? And I'll kind of try to hit on what we were thinking of when we use the apps as we go. So the general format before I begin is we're going to look at an app, and then I'll show you how we kind of use it. And then I've tried to venture out and how other people kind of use it. But if you have ideas on how you think you could use it as we go through, please feel free to add in, or you can put it on the back channel, or you can just yell out. That would be good too. I'm okay with yelling. So, all right. So, the first app that we're going to look at is Earthviewer. It's by HHMI. How many people are familiar with Earthviewer? Oh, good. Oh, this is awesome app. Awesome. Okay. So here's a couple pictures, but I'm going to go ahead and go in app. Now, this is one of the apps that if you click on the link on the notes page, okay. Oh, I guess I should stop. I know, who brings paper to a technology conference? Does anybody like a piece of paper? Okay, I'll be using the back sides of these. Okay, all right. So, but that link is available on that handout. So you can click on it and get right to that. Okay, so if you don't have apps and you have laptops, this one is available for everybody. All right, so I'm going to switch over to the iPad right here. And the iPad versus the computer has slight differences, but not too many. So here's the deal. The nice thing about HHMI, okay, and their idea of what we call biointeractive is that they are very, very teacher-friendly, and they have all of these tutorials. So they have the tutorials available for you. So if I don't cover something that you're interested in, the tutorials are there, and there's a lot of YouTube videos on it as well. But so basically what this is the history of Earth in an app. And it's not just the history of life, it's the history of geologic events, it's the history of chemical events and things along those lines. So if you can see, and I'll move away from that quickly. If you can see, on this side we have, you know, your eons and your eras and your periods, okay? And then you have the Earth. And basically, the kids basically can click through and gather information about any of the eras that they're interested in. So you can click on the Cretaceous period and get information about that. You can click on the Permian period and get information about that. Where it gets really cool is when you start to move your timeline through the different geological time periods, and you can start seeing, oops, let's get rid of the Permian period. You can start seeing what the Earth looked like at that time period. And you can see the supercontinents, which I didn't know there were so many supercontinents. I didn't cover that in college. But you can see all of the supercontinents and things along those lines. Now, obviously, you know, recent Earth's history, that's when all the stuff that is kind of interesting happened about. But if you pinch off to the side here, which I'm not going to pinch that screen, but if you were to pinch that, which is what I'm doing over here, you get to all of the other time periods as well. So this is just the basic backbone of it, okay? And then you start to add overlays, okay? So if you click on your view down at the bottom, that's when you start adding, okay, I want to add the geological events because I'm an earth science teacher and I want to know about the history of Earth, but I want to focus on the geological side. The biological events, those are what I love. Mass extinctions, impact events, fossils, and then cities and grids just gives kids the general, like, perspectives. So if you click on biological events, okay, and as you're going through, you're like, oh, here we have the oldest life on Earth. I click on it. It gives kids information about that, okay, and how we have evidence to support that. And if you keep going up, you see oldest eukaryotes, chloroplasts, and then so on and so forth. And so you can change it to see the mass extinctions. You can click them and turn them all on if you really want to go crazy. And then it also shows where the impact events are. Now, I didn't show this at the beginning, but you can also manipulate the Earth itself. So wherever you are in terms of this, you can move the Earth around and see what's going on. So this is almost like information overload sometimes with the kids. And so, yeah, obviously you're going to want to try to maybe have them focus on a certain thing. Another really cool part of the app is if you look at the charts, okay? Oh, where is it? Oh, shoot. I was looking at the, oh yeah, if you look at some of these other things that are in depth, you can find out more information about them. Let's see here. And you can find out more information about the origin of eukaryotes, a little bit about the fossils, things along those lines. Also, you can look, as you go through the history of Earth, you can see what the carbon dioxide levels are. Let me turn a couple of these views off. And the oxygen levels are, and as you go. The day length is up there, okay, and then how many million years ago. If you're on the computer version, if you can skip back to the computer real quick. If you're on the computer version, you can also, charts. Yeah, so well, actually on the app, okay, I lied, go back to the app, sorry. All right, you can look at, okay, charts. So you can look at the temperature, the carbon dioxide, all of these, the biodiversity, which sometimes this gets a little scary, but ultimately you can look at that. So it's information where the kids get to gather their own information. It's not you presenting them with a data table. It's them just, creating their own data table, okay? Or interpreting, analyzing information. Now, where we use it, okay, back to the computer, thank you. We used it for climate change evidence. I mean, it's obvious for climate change evidence. You can see the carbon dioxide levels. You can see how it relates to the temperature. You can look at the history of life on Earth. And so then ultimately, kids are gathering the evidence and then making their own claims. Okay? And then we look at the reasoning portion. We also use it for your basic timeline creation. Okay? The history of life on Earth and what's going on at each of the parts of the history of life on Earth, and then the overall visualization of tectonic plates moving and things happening on Earth that sometimes is a little hard for 7th, 12th, 32-year-olds to understand, okay? So, any questions on Earthviewer? Okay? All right. We're going to go ahead, and like I said, like it seems high, but if you have them focus in on something, then they can really gain a lot of information and evidence, okay, as opposed to just presenting them the evidence. All right. Next up, we have Click and Learn by HHMI, and this is an app, but also all of these things are available on a web tool as well. There's the link on the note sheet, like always. So for Click and Learn, I'm going to go ahead to that app real quickly. So this is also by HHMI, okay? And basically, this Click and Learn has a bunch of different interactive things that aren't quite as interactive as the Earthviewer, but a lot of interactive information, okay? And then as you scroll through, you can also see they have more things that are like more like a lecture type of thing that has already been put together for you. So I'm going to focus on a couple of them that we use specifically in biology, okay? And we focus on, along with the history of life on Earth, the importance of mass extinctions and the biodiversity loss. And so one thing that we do a lot in biology are claim, evidence, and reasoning conclusions, which I'm sure you guys have heard of before. But we found that if the kids gather their own evidence, it's more significant. So what we do is we use the, and for some reason this one's not on there. Hold on a second. It's the mass extinctions one. It's loading. Okay, so the making of mass extinctions, which is the same thing. There's a link on your note sheet there. But basically, we have the kids go through and they look at the different extinctions. Okay, they make notes about what's happening in terms of, you know, the carbon dioxide levels, the oxygen levels, the luminosity, depending on what information they need, and then ultimately what happened to the biodiversity. So as you click on each of those, you can see, like the end of the Ordovician extinction, you have your carbon dioxide levels, your sea level, and things along those lines, and then 80% extinct. And ultimately what we're doing, if we switch back to the computer really quickly, we're gathering evidence for this idea that we've given them the claim, we are in the 6th mass extinction today, okay? So what we first wanted them to do is we wanted them to go look at, okay, what is an extinction? What are the characteristics of an extinction? And that's what they use that first biointeractive for, okay, of getting the characteristics of the extinction, okay? And then after they've gathered evidence, and as you can see for this one, we've kind of given them what we want them to look at. We want them to look at how long ago was it, what was the major causes, and we've even cued them in, like in the colored box, look at the major causes. And where this is like 10th grade biology, 9th, 10th grade biology, summarize the environmental factors, and then basically the number of affected species. Then after they've gathered information about extinctions in general, okay, which kids actually don't have as much background information except for the dinosaur extinction that we thought, then after that, we have them go and look at this biointeractive, okay, where they look at the Anthropocene part of the history of life on Earth, and so the epoch that we are making claims that we are in right now. And so what they can do is they can click on overlays, okay, where they can see what's happening in the atmosphere, what's happening to biodiversity, what it actually looks like. And then in the bottom, and you can click on these, you can get graphs of what's happening to the levels of the different gases. So what's happening to the atmosphere, what's happening in terms of carbon dioxide, methane, things along those lines. Lots and lots of information, lots and lots of evidence so that they can support their claim and then understand that the reasoning behind it is the human impact on ecosystems. I also sometimes use this app in AP biology for kind of taking home a lecture, because some of the biointeractives are really good for all levels. Okay, I would say, 7th grade, 6th, 7th grade up. But some of the other get a little bit high. Okay, so if you come over to here and you're like, regulation of the lactase gene, okay, or basically, creating phylogenetic trees, things along those lines. So the kids can take home a lecture, okay, because a lot of the times in AP biology we run out of time for labs, so we use all of our time for labs. And then at home, they take home a lecture, just the same idea as the flipped classroom. What I tend to do, and Ms. Burns tends to do as well, I guess her name's Kyla. Sorry, you're programmed that way. Nobody has a first name. Is that we will kind of flip-flop between the flipped classroom and the not flipped classroom. And so that's what we can do here with some of these other things. Ones that I've used for AP biology is the regulation of the lactase gene, human evolution, okay, because kids don't have a lot of experience with that. And so this is kind of a take-home lecture for that. And then also the immune system as a review, kind of an overview of what they've been reading, because it's kind of hard to keep all those cells straight. Okay? All right, do you guys have any questions on Click and Learn? Have you guys had any experience with that? Yes, no? Anybody had any experience that they want to share with the group? Because I am not a professional. I'm faking it.
HumanGenome has a lot of stuff on that website. It's a really good teaching resource. And I think another one to talk about, Sarah Kate was worried because lots of her stuff is very life science. And we know that there's been people that maybe necessarily weren't. But with NGSS coming down and the idea, I got a microphone. With the idea that NGSS is coming down, and we're trying to create units that are more focused around real world examples. Chemistry is going to have to do a little bit more with climate change and ocean acidification and processes like that. So as we try to apply these concepts of chemistry and physics to the world around us, these are easily going to be useful in those content areas as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're going to move past Click and Learn. And then this one actually is, I would say, if you're thinking about more of a middle school app, GeneScreen. Okay, like I said, life science. And then we're also going to what I really love, which is the genetic sides of things. So GeneScreen is an app, and it's only an app. So if you don't have an iPad, I don't think that you can access this on your computer. I could be lying, so if somebody figures that out, let me know. So if we're going to the app on GeneScreen, this is by Cold Spring Harder. So once again, a completely reputable source. I mean, like the authority on DNA, okay? And we have all of these different areas that you can focus on. And what this app does a really good job of at the middle school level is the visualization piece that sometimes is hard for kids to understand about genetics. Okay, yeah, I get that there's cells, I can see those. I get that there's a nucleus. Okay, so then inside the cell we have DNA, and a segment of DNA is called a gene. And so what they can do is they can understand, they can use this app to visualize what's going on. So if you look at the top, these are just basic tutorials. So these would be, if you're thinking about the SAMR model, they might augment, okay? You're not redefining anything with these, but like Mrs. Burns said, when you bring in something new, it's novel, you can spike interest and things along those lines. So like, for example, if you look at genes and inheritance, the kids can click through and visualize things a little bit better than they would with a textbook or with a lecture, and they can go at their own pace, okay? They can take notes, or they can, gather evidence, however you want to kind of attack it, but it's more information-based, okay? And then if you click through, it has them focus on different things. And here you have this idea of looking at DNA okay, from the chromosomal level. Like I was talking about, that visualization piece is sometimes difficult. And then if you go back, okay, then we can talk about, okay, so now we have this DNA. What does this mean in terms of inheritance? So like connecting that dot. And so one of the ones that I think that people might be interested in is this blank Punnett square. So the kids can see a Punnett square filled in for them. Now, one area I see this even in high school would be a lot of times when we're working, we'll do what we call a common formative assessment, a CFA, where we want to check and see if the kids have gotten the priority standards that we're looking at. And then if they have, we do a quick Moodle quiz to do a CFA. And if they have, then ultimately they move forward and towards an enrichment. And since we teach multiple biology classes at the same time, Mrs. Burns and I will be teaching a biology class. We'll have all of the kids take the formative assessment. And then what will happen is Mrs. Burns will take the enrichment side, and the kids will just move. And we don't call them enrichment and remediation. We call them like purple and gold, but they end up figuring it out. But ultimately, this, yeah, like I'm gold, and then but the thing is, it actually, you guys know how high schoolers work. It motivates them. They want, you know what I mean? Like not a lot motivates high schoolers besides Instagram, but ultimately they want to do better. And so what will happen is, you know, kids that you're like, wait a second, you knew this stuff? I didn't even think you were alive in class. Will, you know, really show what they know when they are being grouped because of it. But anyway, so then the kids, enrichment kids will go to Burns, and then some of the remediation kids will come to me. And then I can use like this app to be like, hey guys, we need to stop and take a step back and look at how a Punnett square is filled in and look at what a Punnett square means. Okay, this is mom's information. This is like creating an egg cell. This is like creating a sperm cell. And so this is kind of, although it's really good for, you know, middle school, it's also good for like a different way to present material that you've already presented at a remedial level, or, you know, with kids that might be struggling with some of the concepts, okay? And then the last part of this app is that idea of genetics and passing traits on. And so it kind of focuses on genetic disorders. So you have a map of genetic diseases, and this gets kids to understand, okay, so ultimately we have these regions, and we have people in these regions, and they're passing on these diseases because they're genetic. And so you can see, you can search by region. Okay, and ultimately in North America, what are some of the most prevalent genetic disorders? This could supplement a genetic disorder activity, okay? But it's that idea of the spread of genetic diseases and things along those lines. So any questions on GeneScreen? Oh, I forgot to go. So that basically was the same thing. Anybody got any questions? Anybody used GeneScreen before? Have a super duper lesson they want to post on the back channel? I don't know if you can do that. All right. Okay. Next up, we have HumanGenome. And this is going to be, we use it in bio. You could also use it in AP Bio. This is an app. However, all of the information is on NCBI's website as well, but this is just a little bit user-friendly, more user-friendly for it. So I guess before I jump into the app, I'm going to kind of explain the way that we use it, because this is one of the ones in the SAMR model that has completely redefined how we look at proteins, DNA, cells, and completely just changed how we do this lesson. So what we end up doing is each student is given a protein. Okay, each student is given a protein, and so the kids understand that their protein. So let's say, for example, the FGFR3 protein, which is a growth protein. Okay, and all of the proteins are pretty. I can give you the list of proteins we use for our classrooms. But basically, each kid is given a protein. Okay, and then as they're thinking about protein production, they're thinking about their protein being produced in the cell. So when we look at organelles, we're not just memorizing the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You know, the Golgi apparatus packages and ships the cells. What we're doing is looking at it through the lens of this protein production and proteins as structures. Okay, so I guess we're focusing on structural proteins, I should say. So once each child has a protein, then what their job is to research that protein in general. So when they start to research the protein, they go to the HumanGenome app, and we're starting to understand that, okay, DNA is the code for proteins, and they can type in the gene, okay? So FGFR3, and like I said, if you want a list of proteins that we have worked through, we would be more than happy to share that with you. Because I should say this, is that this is a team. When we come up with this stuff as a team, it's Kyla, me, and Jen, and so this is a lot for one person. I completely understand. And you click on the FGFR3 protein, okay? And then you can see where you click on the gene, sorry. You can see where that segment of DNA is located on the chromosome. So it's chromosome 4, okay? And then you can see that right there. So the kids understand, all right, in the first part of the protein production process, we're starting out with DNA, okay? We have chromosomes. So now as we move from the cell unit, okay, into the DNA unit, they take their protein that they were thinking about before and just the basic idea of protein production in a cell, and now they're taking it to, okay, I understand DNA codes for proteins, and this idea of protein synthesis, okay? And we've done chromosomes between there, so they understand chromosomes. So they find their protein on this app, okay? And then they can click on it. And when they click on it again, and you can do up to 5 at a time if you're really, into proteins. And then they click on it. And what this does is this takes them to a website. Now, this website is through NCBI. It's used by academics. It is kind of confusing. And so what we've kind of done is created tutorials online and how-tos for the kids. But basically, it takes them to information about the protein. Now, also with this, and I didn't, it was like the website called Human Home Genetics, Burns? Home Genetics Reference. Home Genetics Reference. We also tie it to this idea of Home Genetics Reference, so they go back and forth between those. But for this app specifically, it takes them to this, which is the information on that, that protein. And then if you scroll down, and we tell them how to do this, so we don't expect our kids to do this. And if you want more information on this, I would be more than happy to help you. And they click on the FASTA file. So right here is the FASTA file, okay? And what that is you click on the FASTA file, and this is a pretty big gene. And that will pull up the sequence of that gene. Okay, so here the kids are like, holy cow. This is a pretty big one. I don't know how many kilobase pairs it is. But basically, that is all the A's, T's, C's, and G's to make their protein. Every kid has a different protein. We tell them to pick 12, 15 of the first ones, okay? And then we take that information, and they have their A's, T's, C's, and G's, and we transfer that over into what we call some of our protein synthesis activities. So now all of the kids are transcribing and translating their specific protein, part of it, okay? And so theirs are all different. So first of all, you have that difference in high school. I don't know, but high school and technology, one thing that we always worry about is, copying and pasting things from their friends. So when they all have a different gene, then it's more authentic. And so they're actually doing the work and getting the feedback and things along those lines. And so then ultimately that plays a role in their protein synthesis. And then if you will head back to the screen really quickly. Then after we talk about the protein synthesis, then we talk about the mutations, and then it goes into ultimately the genetic disorders. So on that same app, you can look at the genetic disorders or the phenotypes associated with that DNA, okay? And so what this has done is that it has basically re-looked at how we teach DNA and teach protein synthesis and then ultimately cells. And like I said, I'd be more than happy to share the protein list that we have with you, but and I can say this, and Kyla can back it up, it was way better. Last year was way better. We have them create a genetic disorder poster, flyer, which we use the Padlet to help us do a poster sharing session for that. And they all have a picture of their actual protein on there. They start to understand how the structure relates to the function, and they have basically gone and used a public database, which is pretty darn cool in terms of authentic evidence.
It's something like in my last presentation. In the last presentation, we talked a lot about how the kids had a project that they were working on throughout the unit. So in this one, it ends up being their genetic disorders presentation, but we start off the whole unit with a big question of
how can something as small as DNA, which we were just getting out of, create problems as large as a genetic disorder? So we really meticulously picked the proteins in this sequence to match genetic disorders. So we worked backwards and found all the genetic disorders, and we figured out which ones were single gene mutations, and we pulled the protein for that so that the kids eventually, it works out really well that they create their own story of how a person gets whatever disorder that they're going to get. And they get really interested in it because they're following the whole pathway from protein all the way through to the end result of the disorder, and then they end up sharing their disorders with each other. It kind of takes away just the 2 days, let's everybody research a disorder. It's a really long investment in how they get to the end product.
And they also can see like the protein synthesis for their specific protein, obviously parts of it, not the whole thing. We kind of sketch that out and visualize it as well.
It was much more interesting for them to spin it as something that's their individual research versus everybody do the same thing. We're just doing this because I told you we have to learn transcription translation. It sets a purpose for it much better.
And then back to the app. Last year when we were doing this, we were sending them to like websites and having them do searches, and it got kind of tedious. And so I was looking and I found this app, and then I was like, oh my gosh, you can get all the way to the sequence based on this app. And then we also use this app, this NCBI website, in AP biology when we're looking at phylogenetic trees, and we can compare the overlap of genes. Like we look at hemoglobin and we can compare those to see ultimately, okay, are these more closely related? So if you're interested in any of that, please let me know. Okay. Next app, Jolicule. Okay, and this is more physical science. Do we have any high school chemistry teachers out there? Yeah, okay. So this app is called Jolicule, and it's by a guy named Howe, and he's a bioinformaticist. And basically, this app I use in AP biology. Actually, they're working on it today, because whenever you're starting to work with molecules, you'll realize that you have to have Java to really manipulate any of those. And this is one that is iOS friendly, okay? And it is a complete web tool. So it is not an app. I guess I should say it's not an app. It's a web tool. And you just go on, and the link is there. And you can basically manipulate proteins. Okay, so it's a protein viewer on the cloud where ultimately each protein has a different URL. And so it's easy to access, which is always sometimes the biggest hurdle when you're looking at these viewers, because you're like, I want them to do it on their iPads, but I don't have Java. And so this was the way around that. Okay, I found it on the AP Biology listserv. I cannot take credit for it. So if I go to the website real quickly, which I just created a home screen for it, if it wants to, there we go. Okay, and this is basically a protein viewer. And the reason I like this protein viewer better than most protein viewers, because when kids get on protein viewers, or adults get on protein viewers, or any macromolecules viewers, so let's say, for example, let's take polymerase down here. You click on it. Like I said, it has its own URL, so you can send kids to specific proteins that you're looking at. When kids get on protein viewers, they just go like this. And they're like, whoa, it's so pretty. and it's really hard for me as a teacher to create a tutorial. Okay, I am not, I know a little about proteomics, but that's pretty much it. Okay, and so what this app is, or this website is that you can go through, and on the side here, it's the tutorial for you. And the interesting thing about this tutorial is that it's kind of crowdsourced. And so ultimately, as scientists find out more information, they'll add it in, okay? And so you can click through. Let's start at the beginning. And it will tell you where you're going. So if you click through to step 4, this is where the new nucleotides are inserted in DNA polymerase, okay? And so one of the big themes in biology is how structure relate to function. And so you can hit this pretty hard with this app. Okay. Also, one in AP biology, they want us to understand the different levels of protein structure. And so up at the top of this, okay, if you scooch back out, you can see the amino acid sequence. And then you can click on the part of the amino acid sequence, and it will take you to that part of the protein. You can also see the alpha helices and the beta pleated sheets, which are your secondary structure and things along those lines. But ultimately, it's a way for kids to visualize it. How I use it specifically in my classroom is not too high tech. It's basically an exploratory activity. They pick a protein, they click through it, they tell me how does the structure relate to the function, find each of the different structures in the web app and move on from there, and then we share out and we move from there. Okay? All right. Last but not least, we have an app that, I'm sorry, it costs money. Okay? It's called Powers of -10, but we use this when we are introducing the unit. Okay, so it's one of those things that a teacher could purchase it and then use it, but it's a very, very good visualization app. And I included a link. This Dynamoid apps created a YouTube video. So if you didn't want to buy the app, you could go to the YouTube video and kind of zoom through the YouTube video as opposed to the app. But it is $1.99, so we don't have all of the kids purchase it. We do it as an introductory thing. So it's probably an augment, okay, on the SAMR model. So here it is right here. This would be probably middle school, high school, depending on how you're using it. And what this does is just a zoom in, okay? You can play the game, but really, it's not really a game. It's just a visualization tool. All right, so you start off with skin, okay? And ultimately, you can either pinch or out pinch, I don't know, opposite of pinch, I don't know what that is, or hit the plus and minus to go through. But as you pinch, okay, it takes you in, okay? And it gives you on the side, ultimately what the, on the bottom, excuse me, what the magnification is, okay? 3 times 10 to the 4 to the -4 meters. And then if you click on it, it tells you a little bit information about the level that you are, okay? So it gives you a little bit information on skin. Then as you zoom in more, okay, you zoom in farther, and now you start to see the cells, okay, in terms of the skin and the capillaries, and you see the red blood cells. This is where it can kind of go a lot of different directions. You could take it towards cell division. You could take it towards just basic information about cells. But you can click on the different cells, and it tells you what phases they're in, okay? And then you can kind of scroll through. I don't think you could use this to kind of count the phases of mitosis and basically interphase versus mitosis. I don't think it gives an accurate representation of that. But it is a really good visualization. You can see anaphase, things along those lines. Then, as you can see, we're not very far in. You can zoom in farther. You're in the cytoplasmic level. You can start to see the organelles. You can see the cytoskeleton. Okay, you can see the chromosomes. And then you can see them moving. And then, okay, we zoomed in here to a mitotic spindle. I'm going to zoom back out. And you can, trying to zoom into a chromosome. There we go. And you can zoom into a chromosome, okay? And so you can see the structure of a chromosome. And you can keep zooming in till you got your good old deoxyribonucleic acid. And like I said, I don't know if this app is necessarily something that each kid needs to have, or maybe you can have a class out of it, but it is definitely a good perspective, okay? And that's one of the things that they struggle with in terms of cells and things along those lines. Does anybody have any questions on powers of 10? Powers of -10? There's another one where they look at bone. So if you we are actually doing a unit this year on bone to teach about cells and breaking bones. We're trying something else new. And they have a powers of -10 app on bones that I think we're going to use as maybe a review or something along those lines. Okay? All right. I guess I wanted to give some time, and I built in some time for this. I think I have a little bit of time for other apps because, like, you go online, you're like, I really want an app for this, and you Google it, and it's not necessarily very helpful. Okay? Does anybody have any go-to apps out there? I mean, I understand like the sharing apps like that Kyla was talking about, but like content apps where kids are focused on a certain content area, okay, where they can gather information, or websites or anything that you guys find as your like always go-to? Okay.
Is there any type of like database where you can just go on it and it has a big list of apps and you can just control F and find something?
Yeah, exactly. No. That would be great. But if you want to make a lot of money, well, probably not because it's education. So I have no idea of something like that. Besides, I spend some time in the App Store, but that's pretty much it. And then you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to buy this one for 99 cents. How good is it? Mm-hmm.
You could look up Common Sense Media or EdShelf are two databases that have something like that you can type in very specific things in their reviews and teacher reviews.
EdShelf?
EdShelf or Common Sense Media.
Or Common Sense Media. Cool. I guess that they would know more about it. All right, did anybody have any other questions? You can feel free to contact me with questions or ideas, or if any of the lessons that you thought you might want to adapt or use, or if you want to sit down and talk about any of the apps, that's fine too. I was kind of going between talking about these apps and also podcasts. So if you were one of those people that really enjoy podcasts and you want to think about how to get podcasts integrated into your classroom, I would be more than happy to talk to anybody about that. Mrs. Burns does not, or Kyla does not like podcasts, but some of us, other of us do. And so we were thinking about different ways to integrate that. I've used a couple in my AP biology class, and the kids seem to really enjoy multitasking, something about millennials, I guess. And so they really have enjoyed the podcast. But I haven't really integrated much in biology, so if anybody's also interested in that as a completely unrelated note, please let me know. So, all right, that's all I got.
Thank you.